Good morning. It being a few minutes after 9 a.m. on Friday, the 13th of March, I hereby call this meeting of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Partnership Committee to order. This meeting, the agenda was properly posted. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing on demand by Westborough TV. This meeting is in hybrid mode, so that pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting is being conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the meeting location here at Town Hall, and it is possible that any or all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may also be accessed remotely via Teams, given the meeting ID and passcode that was published with the agenda on the Trust's website and the town's website and that of the clerk. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted above or as noted on the agenda. Additionally, the meeting is being broadcast live in real time via Westborough TV. And so thanks everyone for tuning in, for joining us here. We're going to move through. We've got a very full agenda today. So first up would be approval of minutes from the Trust's meetings of February 13th and February 27, 2026. Did anyone have any comments or questions or edits? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes.
Moved by
So moved.
Steve. Oh, you moved.
Second.
Second. Okay, thank you. Okay, by roll call vote, Mark,
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
and Edinburgh, yes. So the minutes are approved by a vote of 4-0, 4 being present. Thank you very much. Next, I will move that we recess the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust meeting for a meeting of the Housing Partnership Committee. And immediately upon adjournment of that meeting, return to the work of the Housing Trust.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. So we enter in to the Housing Partnership Committee meeting by a vote of 4-0, 4 being present. Thank you very much. And what we have before us is the Housing Partnership Committee is a LAU application or local action unit application for 134 Fisher Street. I know that Kristen, as our staff member and assistant town planner, has been working on that application with the developer. Okay. And so we have the local initiative petition and we've looked through it and the petition is complete and correct.
Yeah, I went through all the documents and it looked like everything was included. We went back and forth. She added some things for us. We had a meeting with Rieko from EOHLC, so everything looks like it's in order.
Okay, and so just for the public, I didn't realize I didn't really introduce it. On May 21st, 2024, a special permit was issued by the Planning Board for the construction of a multifamily development consisting of 18 one-bedroom, single-family detached units, each approximately 624 square feet in floor space, and each having only one parking space. This project is considered to be phase one of a larger proposed development. Under our zoning regulations at the time the permit was issued, there will be a total of 4 affordable designated units. A proposed future phase would establish a total of 40 units on the site, so that's additional phases would also include affordable housing units. The property owners completed, as we mentioned, and submitted the application for the trust to review. We are one, for the Housing Partnership Committee to review, we're one of a number of boards and committees that have to sign off that the application is complete and correct, which we in our review and the back and forth, it is the question when Krista mentioned conversations back and forth with Rieko from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, or EOHLC, was whether the restrictions for the affordable units could also include veterans. And you confirmed that they can. No, they cannot.
Not at this time. So when this decision was made, the law that allowed veterans to be included as local preference wasn't in place. So EOHLC is still going back and forth in terms of how are we going to handle that on our end. So the lawyer, they've made a note, they're going to be having conversations about that for our future projects, but that wasn't included as part of the decision for
Right.
this particular property.
Okay, so the permit and everything is still in compliance?
Yes.
And the application's in compliance?
So just to be clear, a resident veteran would get preference as a resident. A non-resident veteran would not get preference.
Correct.
Because anybody gets preference as a resident if they are in fact a resident,
Yes,
veteran or not. But a veteran who's not a resident can't get preference as a veteran because that's not yet, under this particular permit, it wasn't legal.
Correct.
And if I just, again, just for clarity,
Can you use the mic?
the LAU we have in front of us covers 18 units, not 40 units.
Correct.
Just one other question, looking at the documentation we have here, are we acting as the Housing Partnership Committee? Or are we acting as the Housing Trust? Are both required to sign or just one required to sign?
It's the Housing Partnership Committee.
So if a town has a housing partnership committee, then it's the housing partnership committee that
Right.
signs, as well as the select board.
Yeah, I understand. So the proposed action is for the, not for the Affordable Housing Trust, but for the Housing Partnership Committee to sign.
Right, we're acting as the housing partnership
Right,
committee
so
right now.
that, what's written here in the document has to be changed. The motion, it's in,
Oh.
the document
It
says
says
AHT, and I kind of knew that
Yeah.
wasn't correct, so, but I wanted to clarify.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just
So
as
we're-
proposed
we're-
action.
That's just narrative, the actual motion's correct.
So yeah, well, the move then is move to authorize the chair of the Housing Partnership Committee.
But you can say just the chair because we're in the housing partnership
Well,
committee
okay,
now.
I mean,
But
just-
we can add that to the
I
motion.
think the motion ought to just be clear so that there's never any doubt, because it can get confusing to folks who aren't familiar with the details, that we're acting as a Housing Partnership Committee.
Understood.
To authorize Chair of the Housing Partnership Committee to sign the local initiative program application for local action units at 134 Fisher Street as presented.
So that's the
Does that
motion?
make sense? That'd be the motion, right?
Okay, so you just made the motion. Excellent.
That's what, yeah, I was trying to do.
Excellent.
Just let's get
So
this
it's so
thing moving.
moved and,
I'll second it.
okay, great. So we'll do a roll, if there are no further questions, we'll do a roll call vote. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. The motion passes 4-0 for being present. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn the Housing Partnership Committee meeting and return to the meeting of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. That motion passes 4-0 for being present. So we are now back into the Affordable Housing Trust meeting. Welcome back, everyone. And we're back on track time-wise.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now, next on our agenda is a discussion about Article 30, article to amend the general bylaw specifically for the Specialized Energy Code. This is brought forth by Sustainable Westborough. And we have two representatives from Sustainable Westborough here today. If you can introduce yourself for the record. And they're going to do a brief presentation. We'll have time for Q&A. And they are also here to ask us to consider a letter of support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter Flynn, 3 Crown Ridge Road, Chair of Sustainable Westborough.
And Pete Dunbeck, a member of Sustainable Westborough Committee.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning about warrant Article 30, sponsored by Sustainable Westborough. As you mentioned, if passed by a town meeting, it would amend the town bylaws to incorporate what's known as the Specialized Energy Code. And I'll begin with an apology to Mark that he's hearing me speak for the third time this week, so I appreciate his patience. To set the table, what's an energy code? You may be aware, but it's a provision of state law that governs the design and construction of buildings with respect to energy efficiency. When the state last amended the energy code 3 years ago and introduced a new optional provision, optional for municipalities to choose, and that's called the Specialized Energy Code. The purpose of the Specialized Energy Code is to promote cost-effective measures that reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with new buildings. And it does it in two ways. One is by encouraging electrification, that is, electricity for heating and other uses rather than fossil fuels. And the second way is by providing for enhanced energy efficiency. The warrant article, if adopted, would take effect January 1st of next year to allow a transition period for projects that are already in the pipeline. And critically, this change would apply only to new buildings, not to existing buildings. So given that, how is it going to affect 99+% of the residents and businesses in the community? The direct impact will be improved environment by reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that are put into the atmosphere associated with new buildings. There's no direct financial impact, although there is the potential down the road for some tax and utility bill savings, and I'll talk about those in a minute. So what's included in the code? I talked about new buildings only, and new buildings here really means new buildings. Nothing's there now, you put up a building, or you take down an existing building and you put up a building. It doesn't apply to additions, alterations, or changes of use for existing buildings. So new buildings really does mean new buildings. And actually, the changes are restricted to a subcategory of new buildings. For most new buildings, there's actually no change, because if buildings are all electric, then there's no change in the code. The changes affect are one category, buildings that use fossil fuel. And for those buildings, they'd be required to do two things. They'd be required to add some solar, and the amount of solar would vary depending on the size of the building and the lot characteristics. And the second is they'd be required to pre-wire for later electrification. So at some point in the future, the building owner would decide to electrify, the wiring is already in the building. And the reason for that is obviously it's cheaper and easier to put the wiring in at the time the building is constructed and the walls aren't up than to have to go back in and, go into the walls and pull the wiring at a later point in time. With regard to new buildings that use fossil fuel, the state did a 12-month analysis of conditioned space that was built during a recent period of time, and they found that over 92% of the new commercial buildings were already putting in electric heat, electric hot water. So when you look at the category of buildings that are affected that aren't already all electric, talking about a small subset of new buildings that are still putting in fossil fuel. The second category of buildings that would be affected are new multifamily buildings, and they would be required to meet what's known as the Passive House Efficiency Standard. Passive House is a building performance standard that promotes high energy efficiency and high thermal comfort, and that substantially reduces the greenhouse gases associated with the building. And it does this by having a tighter shell around the building, and then it compensates for the tightness of the shell by having enhanced air handling equipment so that the fresh air coming in is larger than it would be in a normal building, but then it recaptures the heat. So you're bringing in more fresh air, but recapturing and circulating the heat. So the end result is actually a significant reduction in the electricity associated with it, and in a reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions. And again, we're talking about a subset of multifamily buildings because, again, the state looked at the period of the year 2025 and that it found in mass save communities, which Westborough is, already 80% of the new multifamily buildings were being built to the passive house standard. So when we look at this, we're talking really about a subset of new buildings that are really lagging behind what's become the prevalent construction standard, both with regard to electrification and with regard to building to the passive house standard. The benefits to Westborough are a number. One is reducing harmful greenhouse gas emissions from new buildings, which benefits all of us. Secondly, and that of course is why Sustainable Westborough first started looking at this. But there are other benefits as well. One is it unlocks an additional source of state grant funding. The state now has a program called Climate Leaders Program. To qualify as a climate leader, a community has to meet 6 criteria. Westborough already satisfies 4. This, if passed by town meeting, would be 5. And the remaining would be approval of a decarbonization plan for decarbonizing the municipal buildings over the course of the next couple of decades. That's well along in draft form. We plan to present it to the select board and the school committee this spring. So this is one step towards one of the 2 remaining steps of qualifying as a climate leader community. And if we're a climate leader, it unlocks a new source of grant funding the state has made available just for climate leader communities. In addition, because passive house buildings in particular, but in general, buildings built to the efficiency standards in the code are put a lower demand on the electric grid than buildings that are built to the standards that are allowed under the code today. It actually helps prolong the life of the existing electric infrastructure in town. When you add electric load, you're using up some of the remaining capacity in the system. And to the extent a new building, particularly a new multifamily building, is using up less of the remaining capacity, it helps defer the date in which new capacity might have to be added. New capacity adds to the cost of everybody who pays an electric bill. And finally, the code would help achieve high-quality buildings that benefit occupants in 2 ways. One is lower electric bills, because the lower electric use. And the second is actually a healthier and quieter living environment. Healthier for the reasons I talked about a few minutes ago, but also quieter because of the better shell. And when you look at multifamily buildings that may be built along busy roads in town, that's also a benefit to occupants. So specifically with regard to affordable housing, for passive house buildings, I mentioned lower utility bills for occupants and healthy and quiet indoor environment, but also passive house buildings are favored in the competitive scoring system used by the state to allocate low-income housing tax credits. That under the 2022-23 plan, which I understand is still in effect, a passive house building is 8 extra points in the scoring system. Under the draft 2025-26 qualified allocation plan, it will qualify for 10 points. I understand, although this isn't my area of expertise, you probably know better than I do, I'm told that's a significant advantage for these type of buildings. So therefore, passive house construction is actually seen as a plus when regards to promoting affordable housing because of the available of these tax credits. So who else has adopted the specialized code? At this point, 56 municipalities across the state since 2023. It's only been in effect for 3 years, so 56 communities is actually a pretty good number. And then 8 other communities we're aware may have warrant articles this spring looking to adopt the specialized code. And those communities comprise over 32% of the state's population. And among those communities are 3 of the communities that are benchmark communities for Westborough: Hopkinton, Natick, and Ashland. So nearby communities that we look at as being benchmark communities have already moved in this direction. We're not in the vanguard on this. We're now in what I'm seeing as kind of the mainstream push of communities to move towards adopting of the specialized code. So I talked about the grants that are available by the state. How could they be used? to decarbonize municipal buildings or install solar on municipal buildings. And when I look at the state's or the town's capital expenditure plan, there are a number of projects that are looking at potentially replacing the HVAC system, primarily in schools, because those existing systems are going to be reaching the end of their useful life, or replacing the systems that are there to heat hot water in the schools. And some of those are listed in the slide. We're not promoting any particular project. That's really not our responsibility. That'll be up to the appropriate boards in town to make decisions on capital plans. Simply noting that there are projects that we're looking at in the pipeline that could benefit from this additional source of funding. And of course, to the extent we're using state funding, it reduces the amount of money that has to come from local taxpayers. So why now? And the reason is that the new buildings we built today are likely going to be with us for 25 years, 50 years, 75 years, or maybe more. And so to the extent that we don't address the greenhouse gases from these new buildings, it's a lost opportunity. The emissions will be with us for decades. The higher emissions will be with us for decades to come. And so in that way, delay simply makes the existing problem of greenhouse gases contributing to climate change worse. Westborough is not going to solve the climate change problem, but we have an opportunity here to take a modest step that will help avoid making the problem worse. And the earlier adoption puts Westborough in the queue earlier for state funding and the potential, therefore, for more state dollars coming into the town for our projects. We've done outreach to other communities that have adopted the specialized code, and I've just highlighted a few of them here, but you can see some of the comments we received back. Hopkinton, next door, the town manager, we asked them how the specialized code adoption is going in their community, and she said she sees clear benefits, that the specialized code has been manageable and effective in its implementation. A select board member, an Affordable Housing Trust Board member from Lexington, said that the opponent said it's going to cost so much, you're going to stop the development of affordable housing. But he said that clearly has not been the case. And the sustainability director in Natick said that they're seeing more builders just go for the all-electric option, and that the passive house standard, while it's a change, it's not significantly different from the criteria under the stretch code when it comes to implementation. In fact, they found it to be much easier for the inspectors than applying the standards under the existing code that is in effect in Westborough and that was in effect in Natick. So by way of summary, we believe that if town meeting approves this, it'll be a plus for the town. It'll unlock an additional source of state grant money. It reduces harmful greenhouse gas emissions by tipping the scale in favor of electricity over fossil fuels and providing for increased energy efficiency. It's better for the occupants of the buildings by way of lower utility costs and a healthier and quieter indoor living environment. And it's a better quality of building and really has no impact on additions, alterations, or change of use. So really no impact on most of the residents in town. And so with that, I'm stopped and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So I'll start with Mark Silverberg, who I know you've seen this in your role at the select board. Do you have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions, Alan. I've voiced my support for this previously, so I will let everyone else speak.
I don't have any questions.
Yeah, I don't think I do either, it seems
No. So
pretty straightforward.
I had asked some questions on a Westborough TV interview.
I actually have an answer for you.
Oh, you did?
You asked about gas use in industrial processes.
Yeah.
Industrial processes aren't regulated by the building code, so this has no effect on any decision about process heat and making steam or whatever for using gas.
So yeah, so my question was, and this was done on an interview with these gentlemen that's up available on Westborough TV to help people learn more about this warrant article, was that the scope of this is only for heat and hot water for the building. So if you're building an industrial facility and you need fossil fuels, natural gas to run equipment, this does not affect that at all. It only is heating the envelope and providing hot water.
A little tweak to that. So there's 4 uses of gas that are regulated by the building code. Heating, hot water, the dryers, electric dryers are needed, and the gas stoves.
Okay.
But industrial processes are regulated by a different part of the code.
Thank you. Okay. So if there are no further questions or discussion, I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chair to send a letter of support to Sustainable Westborough and to allow the chair or chair's designee to present the trust support on the floor of town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We'll vote.
Goldberg, yes.
Ferrara, yes.
Roush, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. Motion passes by a vote of 4-0, 4 being present. Did you have a comment?
No.
Okay, so we have a draft memo. We'll take a look, we'll edit that and get that sent out, hopefully by end of day today.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the HB Cottages project. There's some context for the community. In the fall, we held a community forum to start getting initial input on some of our thoughts about how we might develop the project, deliberately to solicit feedback before we started the RFP process and set our criteria and requirements out to bid and what we'd be asking the developers to consider or do. Also, before we start the process of looking at the different financing options and funding options, if there are any federal dollars available or state funds available to assist, as well as potentially subsidy for this type of project from the trust itself. We received a lot of very valuable and useful feedback from the community. And in looking at that feedback, we also realized that we got a great variety of feedback. And for the 2 properties, there were common elements about traffic, safety, density. More around the Beach Street property, there was also concerns about where the buildings might be placed, sight lines, the historical nature, the fact that that neighborhood is and the property is within a historical district, and what does that mean, and things of that nature. So in considering the community feedback, our initial thought was we're going to take that feedback, document it, go back to the design team, come back with another set of illustrative designs, not what the property would look like, but sort of reflecting the boundaries that we'd provide the developers who would be bidding on the project, as it's their responsibility to come up with the final design and engineering diagrams and usher it through the permitting process. In thinking about, do we continue on a process where we get community feedback, come up with new concepts or modify the concepts, go back out to another community meeting, get additional feedback, and how many rounds of that we felt we might need. Trustee Kate Storm suggested, why not do a community forum and a workshop? And that sort of definitely took off. And so the trust, right before the first of I believe in our December meeting, decided that we would go out and seek a facilitator to run a community workshop that would provide us with, in the community, the ability to get together in a charrette-style meeting and actually let people provide the attendees with information about public housing development, affordable housing development, and how it works and how it differs from traditional development a little bit, particularly around funding and some of the regulations as additional considerations, and then actually let people model the properties and play with ideas and say, one of the goals is you want to provide as much housing as is reasonably possible. You want to manage the impact on the neighbors and the neighborhood, but it has to be you have to have enough density to make it financially viable. All of these different considerations that come into play, members of the community could literally sit down with diagrams or models, work through scenarios and come up with suggestions that we would then collate and use to establish definitive criteria as well as preferences in the RFP before we move forward with the project in any formal way. We put that effort out to bid. We had 3 respondents come back who could facilitate the meeting for us. All of them have worked in similar related capacities with the town of Westborough before and have done similar type community engagement work for other projects in other communities within the Commonwealth as well. We received those. The HB Cottages Working Group has met on multiple occasions to review the responses and did an evaluation workshop and came back with a recommendation. And so this agenda item, we've got a couple of things to cover, mostly around selecting and taking a vote to select who we're going to award the work to, as far as which of the consultants. And so in the packet is our, is the scoring sheet that we used. And we had a number of criteria along, with the evaluation process. We looked at how well the respondents understood the goals and the desired content, the goals of the workshop process and the project itself, the contents and sort of nature of the workshops that we were looking for. We looked at timeline, budget, relevant and similar work, experience and of the team that they were assigned to the project. And then specific to the workshop, we looked at the preparation process, the types of workshop materials and the participant experience that would be present, the number of sessions involved as far as workshop goes, and how they would manage and prepare and present the findings, both in terms of a report, a presentation back to the trust, developing recommendations for RFP criteria and preferences that we would consider for inclusion in the RFP. I have the workshop, but before I go into anything further, I want to see if, particularly, Hank is on the working group, Ed, who's also on the working group with Hank and I, is not able to be here today at this point in time in the meeting. So I want to make sure that Mark and Steve, if you had any questions about the materials.
No, I thought the grid was actually quite helpful because obviously all 3, quotes were extensive, and that was a nice way for me to even sort of take a look at it. And I don't really have any real questions. I thought it was well put together. I thought all 3 quotes were good, but it was a nice way to sort of differentiate them.
Okay. And Mark?
Yeah, I thought all 3 quotes were really, it was a tough decision. So I'm glad that the working group did a more scientific analysis of it because, in my reading them, I was struggling to make a choice in the sense that I thought they were all great. So I'm willing to go with the recommendation.
Okay, and so what I'll say here is that the recommendation of the working group would be to award the work to the firm of J.M. Goldson. And so there are actually a number of motions that we have to go through to bring that process. So the first, and then we have a second item, order of business with HB Cottages related to the project in general. We'll discuss after we do that. So the first would be looking for a motion to award J.M. Goldson the contract for facilitating the HB Cottages project community workshop, providing the services as defined in the request for proposal and their proposal response as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Just make a note. Okay. Roll call vote. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion passes 4-0. For being present, we will notify We'll send a note out to all of the respondents, thanking them for their participation and and notifying Jan Goldson of the award. The second motion that I'm looking for is to authorize the chair or chair's designee with input from council as appropriate to prepare and sign a statement of work for the HB Cottages Project Community Workshop and to further allocate the sum of $18,000 for the project.
So moved.
Second.
Silverberg, yes.
Oh, thank you. I was about to call it.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes.
Yeah,
So that motion passes 4-0 with 4 being present. Related to this, it was great. I received some communication from the Mass Housing Partnership, just checking in to see how things are going. We've been talking with them on a number of initiatives over the last several months, and they recommended that as a trust, we are eligible to receive technical assistance on this project, which could range from technical assistance with drafting the RFP, working on getting pre-approval and community, further community support, interacting with even guidance on how best to interact with other town committees and what type of support to seek to them before we go out to bid on the RFP and that process, as well as assistance with state level and other funding sources for the project as well. And so there's a very brief application process involved in that. And what I would like to do is, if people have questions, I'm happy to answer it. But I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize the chair or the chair's designee to apply for technical assistance grant with the Massachusetts Housing Partnership for guidance on the local initiative program process for the HB Cottages project.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Nope. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. So that passes 4-0 for being present. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is the project at 3 Baylor Avenue. And it's exciting because a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, I think 2 weeks ago now,
Yes.
2 weeks ago, we held a little ribbon cutting ceremony to celebrate the completion of the home and its readiness to get the final paperwork signed and move to closing. So the family that won the lottery could move in, which really does bring the project to a close. It's interesting, and we'll get some anonymous or anonymized demographics on the applicants for that property. But it's my understanding that over 50 households submitted applications initially, 45 qualified, met the qualification requirements as an eligible household for that home in the lottery. And so it clearly illustrates that there's a need and a demand in our community for continued work on affordable housing. It also, the feedback I've received from participants at the open house and others who've seen the home is that we've produced a very high quality product that will serve the family very, very well for decades to come. And feedback, it was great to, as we were finishing up, for neighbors to come out and share their excitement and thank us for also taking a property that had been derelict and abandoned for a number of years and turning it into an attractive, functional, an active part of their community. And there's an excitement that young kids are moving into the neighborhood as well. And so that's very cool. So we have a couple of things to do to sort of close out this project. Our understanding is that everything is set and it's literally just been a logistical issue now with scheduling the physical closing so that the final paperwork can be submitted to the Register of Deeds. The land development agreement and the restrictions, the deed restrictions on perpetual, forever affordable housing that are already filed with the Registry of Deeds, which is good. So our interests are protected. Additionally, as the certificate of occupancy was issued, that authorized the trust, and the mechanics are happening, or they've already happened, to provide the developer with the subsidy based on the formula in the subsidy agreement and the allocation. We provided the developer with the subsidy of $154,005 towards the construction costs of the property. And for those not familiar, when you're building an SHI certified affordable home, by state law, you're restricted on how much money you can make. And that's because the state determines the sale price of the home. And construction costs vary, right? And are variable with market conditions and supplies and labor costs, things of that nature. That is less than the maximum subsidy that we offered to provide, that we felt we would be able to provide. And so in that regard, this project came in under the budget of what we thought we might need to pay to subsidize the development of this home. And so there are three motions we need to go through. The first motion to entertain is to, since we no longer need it, to cancel the outstanding balance of $17,841 of the trust's allocation for the subsidy as defined in the land development agreement for 3 Baylor Avenue, is filed with the Worcester South Registry of Deeds, Book 70309 on page 265 on March 21st, 2024. This motion, do I have a motion in a second?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Okay, so for a discussion point, what this motion does is it releases the allocation as a committed use of our funds off of our financial reports. And it becomes cash available or an asset available that we can now use or allocate to other initiatives and projects. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll take our vote by roll call. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So that motion passes 4-0 for being present. The second order of business, as folks may recall, as we started working with the developer, we learned that, and it was really caught by the developer's lender for the construction loan, that back in 2004, there was a significant home heating oil spill on the property. It was cleaned up and remediated. The Mass Department of Environmental Protection signed off that the remediation was complete and correct. However, in their paperwork, they neglected to document the depth of the soil that was removed and the exact measurements of the area of remediation. So there was some concern that there still might be some residual contamination physically below the house. And you'll recall that we subsequently hired a site license professional who deals with this type of contamination, and who could also deal with the fact that the flooring and the siding in the house had asbestos in them, to drill core samples through the foundation into the area where the spill was to determine and verify definitively that there was no residual. That said, the lender was still a little bit nervous that there might need to be some remediation once the physical digging started. And so to move that issue along, the trust agreed to put $20,000 in escrow that the developer could request and use should they need to do any additional soil removal or take any other remedial steps. And that would limit our liability for any further work to that $20,000. As we expected, there were no further issues. Those funds were not needed. And so now, to return those funds physically back to the trust, I would entertain a motion to cancel the escrow for 3 Baylor Avenue related to potential hazardous materials issues, and to return the $20,000 and accrued interest, if any, to the trust.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing, hearing none. Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. So that passes 4-0 with 4 being present. And the final motion would be to formally a motion to formally close the project at 3 Baylor Avenue, pending the filing of the closing documents with the Registry of Deeds.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mark?
Overwork, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Rouse, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. So the motion passes 4-0, 4 being present.
We need to do anything to authorize the treasurer to cut a check?
No, that happened with the closing documents.
Okay.
So I don't know if people heard Hank ask if we had to do anything special to authorize the issuing of the check. When we signed the subsidy agreement, it states that the treasurer can release the funds
Okay.
once the certificate of occupancy has been issued. We notified the treasurer that the CO had been issued, and so the documents were signed and moved to make that happen. And that, if it hasn't happened this week, it's imminent as far
Yeah,
as
that's
the next
fine.
check run and stuff. So that
I
is
expect the
happening as
developer
well.
will be looking for his money.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So moving on, we now have 2 more articles that we wanted to bring forth to present and discuss, for consideration of support by the trust. The first is Article 31, amendment to the zoning bylaw, the downtown business district. And the second is Article 33 to amend the zoning map. This relates to a property in one of our commercial industrial zones. Both of these were submitted by the planning board. And so our director of planning, is it? Yes. Director of planning? I always forget, is it planning director or director of planning?
Sounds very fancy.
It's director of planning is here to present. So if you could introduce yourself and we'll dive right in for Article 31.
Okay, thank you. Jenny Gingras, Director of Planning. So I'm here to present to you for Article 31, and then for the next zoning article, while the Planning Board is sponsoring it, I do have the property owners here from Ferris Development that will be presenting on that article. So Article 31 is proposing updates to the zoning for the downtown business district. As you may recall, this zoning article came to town meeting last fall, and it was voted to be referred back to committee, so we took it back, and we did some more work on it. We made some clarifications and a couple of changes that I'll explain, and so now we're bringing it back to town meeting for March. So the purpose and vision is the same. We're not creating a new vision for downtown. It's about implementing the plans that the town has already adopted. In 2018, we did the strategic plan, which emphasized creating a vibrant and connected community that supports local businesses. In 2021, we did our master plan, which called for revitalizing the downtown and encouraging a walkable development. And then most recently, we did the 2024 downtown plan, which reflected the community input and then asked for creating a downtown with local businesses, gathering spaces, and a strong sense of place. And then I know I've mentioned this before, but even before these plans, our master plans previously had also talked about doing the same thing for downtown. And then we also have a specific downtown plan that was done in 1984, which had the same vision. So it's definitely not new to Westborough. So just to talk about the review process a little bit, I won't go back to 1984. I'll start with the downtown plan in 2024. But that's where we really took on going and doing the public outreach. We did surveys, we attended farmers markets, we attended different stakeholder groups, including with the high school. We attended a class there in 2024 and talked to them about what their feedback was. And then recently, a group, Westborough Forward, a club at the school, did a survey with the students. They had over 100 responses about what they want to see for downtown. We also talked about it with the planning board. We had our public hearings. Like I mentioned before, we presented at fall town meeting. It was referred back for further review. But The planning board had additional discussions. We did more public outreach, talked to more people, and then now the planning board has recommended approval. So the proposed changes are really about simplifying and modernizing the zoning. You may have seen my other presentations where I showed the current zoning map. This is the proposed zoning map, but the current zoning map has a lot of different zoning districts in downtown. The downtown includes industrial zoning. It has where we consider downtown residential zoning, and then the downtown business district. On top of that, we also have what's called the downtown planning overlay district, which allows for some more flexible zoning through a special permit from the planning board. There's just a lot going on. It can make it very confusing for small businesses or property owners to want to reinvest in downtown. So we thought it would be much easier to have one clear downtown business district, which replaces some of that overlapping zoning that currently exists. We're also removing the industrial zoning from downtown, which is definitely outdated. It was there from when Bay State Abrasives was in town. And make the zoning consistent with the way the area functions today. It also aligns the zoning with the existing buildings and businesses, which reduces the number of properties that are currently non-conforming. And finally, the goal is to make it easier for property owners and small businesses to reinvest in their buildings without running into unnecessary barriers. And then talking about housing, because I know that's what you all do, another key change is related to the multifamily housing in the downtown district. Currently, the multifamily housing use requires a special permit under the downtown planning overlay district, which adds an additional discretionary approval step. So we're proposing to be like the other uses in downtown and allow multifamily housing and mixed-use development by right. But it would still require a site plan review with the planning board. So we're removing an unnecessary regulatory hurdle while still ensuring that projects are carefully reviewed for issues like layout, access, parking, and compatibility with surrounding development. Clear and flexible downtown zoning can also make it easier for housing opportunities to emerge over time, particularly through mixed-use redevelopment and upper-story residential units, which was a lot of what we heard when we were doing the public outreach that people want. They want to see housing downtown. One thing that's important to emphasize is that this proposal does not increase the scale of development downtown. We're using the same height limits that are in place with the overlay district, so the same overall development scales remaining. The projects would still require planning board review through a site plan review. The design review board would review the architecture, so preserving the historic character of downtown. And overall, the approval for multifamily housing specifically would be more straightforward. Again, the planning board would still have that oversight through the site plan review, and the design review requirements would still apply. And this slide I added in, it wasn't in your packet, but I added it in because I wanted to make sure I focused a little more on housing with this for this board. Housing is obviously very important for a healthy downtown. If a downtown only has offices and businesses, activity tends to happen mostly during the day. But when people live downtown, you have activity throughout the day and into the evening. Residents can walk to restaurants, shops, and services. It helps support local businesses and creates a more vibrant and active environment. Housing also creates opportunities to reuse the upper floors in existing buildings, which right now in downtown do have some vacancies. So it helps preserve the historic structures while bringing more life to downtown. And again, we're not increasing the building heights or the overall scale of the downtown. It's simply making it easier to allow appropriate housing within the existing framework. So just to sum it up, The article simplifies the downtown zoning and makes it easier for property owners to reinvest in their properties. It supports local businesses, encourages reinvestment in historic buildings, and implements the goals of the master plan and the downtown. It also creates a more predictable pathway for multifamily and mixed-use housing downtown by allowing it by right while still requiring that planning board site plan review. So overall, the intent is to make the zoning clearer, more functional, and better aligned with the community's vision for downtown. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark, I know you've seen these presentations and have been involved in discussions in your role on the select board. I'm wondering if you have any questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Jenny and the planning board and the zoning team for, all the time they spent on this. They addressed some of my concerns. I'm fully supportive of this. I've always been supportive of the intent. And I think they did a great job. And I think, I'm absolutely supporting this.
Okay. Any other questions?
No questions. I just support the whole idea. But I think heading in the directions that have been set, simplifying the whole planning process for downtown. And we have to, we're living in a different age today than we were 100 years ago when we had base data abrasives and things like that. And we need to change with it.
I agree with basically what both of them said. It's also more clear from the previous one, so
Yeah.
that's helpful as well.
Yes, it's helpful for staff too, because definitely there's a lot of different places to look right now in the zoning, and so this is really simplifying that.
Okay. I know there's been some concern in the community, particularly from small business owners. And so just sort of, and I know the answer to these questions, but I'm going to ask them anyways, just so that the public understands and those business owners understand that anyone operating a business in this district can still do so.
Yes, absolutely.
And if they sell the business, the new owners can operate that same business.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
businesses can still renovate and remodel and do things like that.
Yes, absolutely.
And if and when they go to sell the business and the property, it's the new owners, if they decide to redevelop the property, would fall under these new rules and guidelines.
Yes, they can, and it actually makes it easier for property owners if they're looking at selling their property. It makes it easier to involve the banks and other potential buyers of the property because you have different businesses that can go in besides what was already allowed. So it just helps them out in that way as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, let me pull up. I'll entertain a motion to authorize the chair or the chair's designee to draft and send a letter of support for Article 31, amend the zoning bylaw, downtown business district, to the planning board and to present the trust support as appropriate on the floor of town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mark
Silverberg, yes.
Ferrara, yes.
Roush, yes.
and Edinburgh, yes.
Great, thank
So
you.
motion passes 4-0 for being present. Before we move to the next item, which is the other article, we have a little bit of a conundrum. I was expecting that Ed Bain would be able to join us remotely for this point of the meeting. And I have a question about how we need to handle it. So I'm going to propose a way to move forward, and then we'll have to confirm some things with council. In my former role on the select board, in my role as a select board member, I was named as a member of the select board and individually in a number of lawsuits related to the property at 231 Turnpike Road. And even though that process for that property is coming to close, I have not been notified that that litigation, outstanding litigation, has actually been closed and settled and dismissed by the court. Therefore, I'm concerned that any comments I make about, since it's the proponent is also involved in that litigation, in some of those lawsuits, that any comments or views pro or con could be seen as biased or impacted on that. And even though I don't believe technically it's a conflict of interest, I wouldn't even want the appearance of conflict of interest. So I would recuse myself from this discussion. I believe that we still have a quorum. If I recuse myself from this agenda item, I'm still physically present in the meeting. We still have a quorum for the meeting, but we'd only have 3 members here. I'm not sure if those 3 members make a vote, if it's considered an action of the trust. And because it's not an abstention, it's a recusal. And so what I'm going to suggest is that I'm going to, because of the potential conflict of interest or even the appearance of conflict of interest, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion. I'm going to ask Mr. Roush to take over as vice chair of the trustee. I would suggest the presentation be made. The 3 trustees remain. I will, if you want to do a motion and take a vote, you should do so, and then we will confirm with council later today if we can record that vote and act on it. And if it's an invalid vote, we would just note that and move forward and not
Alan,
present it.
would it be possible for you to just not vote? I mean, to abstain in the voting?
I should not be part of the discussion.
Not even, but I know you can't
Yeah.
be part of the discussion.
No,
That means you can't vote at all. Okay.
Right, yeah. I should
Sure, well,
recuse,
we-
which also involves me stepping off from behind the podium here for the discussion. Are you comfortable with that?
Sure, I'm comfortable
Okay.
with that.
Then, for the aforementioned reasons, I'm going to recuse myself from this item on the agenda.
We need, can someone just give us the background again on what the 231 Turnpike Road issue is? Introduce yourself as presenters and give us the background on what you would like to talk about. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. My name is David Ferris. Thank you for having us here today. I'm joined with my Associate General Counsel, George Bonan of the Ferris Development Company. And I think if I could be allotted 5 to 10 minutes just to explain overall why we're here and what we're trying to accomplish, that'd be
Please
great.
do.
Yeah. So just as a matter of background, we're here really to reset our relationship at a company level and my personal relationship with the community. And we're making a good faith attempt to bring something that we think could be very positive for the taxpayers and for affordable housing in Westborough. Just by way of background, we began our work with Westborough about 12 years ago, acquiring several key properties. One of the marquee properties that we're here before you today is 1 Research Drive, the big silver building as you enter the community from Route 9. And in that capacity, we bought it as a distressed asset. The prior pension fund paid about $58 million. We bought it for about $21 million. We were very successful at leasing it up and bringing in a world-class biotech company, Genzyme. Unfortunately, it got acquired by Sanofi, ended up leaving the building, which left it very vacant, more than 70%. We were very blessed in the sense that we were able to bring some really high-quality tech firms back to the building and revitalize it. And but post-COVID, use is way down. The site has about 1,200 parking spaces, of which on any given day, if you went by there today, you'd see about 200 being used. I think that we've also made investments in 4 Technology Drive and 8 Technology Drive. Again, we paid about $24 million for those assets. We sold them in the last couple of years for about $44 million or $45 million. We've been able to dramatically and have a track record in Westborough of increasing tax value through our economic relationships, our cross-pollination of several businesses that we own in the investment management space, where we're able to lure a lot of CEOs that we have strong relationships with to these buildings, some who were co-investors with me in these investments. We've invested about $50 million of capital in the last 12 years into Westborough. It's been very successful, I think, for Westborough and for our firm and for the taxpayers in terms of lifting tax values. I think in for tech, we were able to bring Eversource's national command center, which started as a very small tenant, but through active dialogue, we were able to grow them to a full building user, and which led to them ultimately buying the building. That work led to a real strong recovery for the DoubleTree, which every one of these big storms that comes up sees a flood of hotel rooms rented. So that corridor has really meaningfully improved from Eversource's decision to acquire that property. And we still have a very strong relationship with Eversource and manage that building and the respective roadway that encompasses all of Technology Drive. And we make various improvements to the systems on that roadway. 8 Technology Drive, we sold to a local investor at, again, about double what we paid for it after we brought in a national semiconductor company called Marvell. So I just kind of set the stage that we're pretty good at adding value. I think our hands are a little tied in the Research Drive investment at this point because occupancy is way down due to COVID. And office use is changed probably near term and long term in terms of how people are using their office space. But most importantly, the psychology of office lessors has really changed. People really want to live, work, and play near where they're leasing space. And we started this discussion last August with the select board, and we had a very positive set of discussions with them that ultimately that goodwill deposit they made in willingness to have those discussions put some discussions we were having on pause, which were to sell the rear portion of the parking lot to a large church. We didn't see it as a positive step for the community or a positive step for building occupancy, which is the core investment on that property. Ultimately, the buyer that was looking to purchase the rear parking lot ended up purchasing 3 contiguous pieces very close in proximity, 11, 12, and I think 1400 West Park Drive for about $14 million. That was to be originally developed as the Mass General site that UMass actually crushed and never happened. So thematically, what's been happening is some churches have been buying up large acreage that has been redeveloped into church use and non-taxable assets. Because of our dialogue with both the select board and most importantly, the planning board's visit in September, we really saw a pathway where we could do something really positive for the community. And through a lot of constructive dialogue with the planning board, we were able to come up with a mixed use concept that we think can activate that entire corridor. Right now, I would suggest respectfully to the entire taxpaying community, Westborough has a crown jewel that sits directly abutting our investment, and that is the life science lab project that a very forward-thinking planning board approved pretty well in terms of working with the applicant. I think that has the potential to be a $750 million to $1 billion taxable asset. Westborough sits currently with about $1.2 billion in commercial investments. Our investment in this site is proposed to be about $150 million. And so I think cumulatively, we have the opportunity to maybe double the tax base if these 2 projects, ours and the neighbors, end up coming out of the ground. I think that this site and this proposal that we're making to Westborough is extremely unique. And I think one of the select board members, it might have been Mark the other evening, picked up on something that was very interesting. You know, in seasonality and working with a lot of developers, often these entitlements are given, and then what is suggested to be given back in terms of mitigation payments, et cetera, it doesn't happen. And I think the best part of this proposal is the fact that there is a current office building on the property, and it allows Westborough to remain heavily in control of the site. Even with a positive town vote, we cannot build the proposal without concessions given back to the town and negotiated by the planning board and select board. And I say that because respectfully, after we had our last select board hearing, I went back and looked at our tenant roster, and it actually goes out to more than 105,000 tenancies square feet in the building run out to 2031 to 2032. So even if we wanted to tear the building down or, put more housing than we're proposing, it's just, you can't unwind, commercial leases. So the town's in a very interesting position in the sense that this private investment of $150 million can really activate that corridor. In terms of how it parlays into affordable housing, I think that the planning board feels strongly this should be rental property, and they have a unit mix that I think is less burdensome to the school system. I think we're estimating the total services to the community to be sub 500,000. In fact, probably closer to 300,000. We estimate the annual tax increase to the community to be roughly $2 to $3 million on our site. But the most important component that I tried to really hammer home at the select board level is I think these two uses are symbiotic, meaning the $1 billion life science center needs an economic activation mixed use. It needs housing, retail on that side of the corridor to become a useful site and not just a land development site of an old electric, company's plant. So I think that what we're really before the boards in the town ultimately asking for is a change in zoning from industrial B to D or D to B. And I think that this would really ultimately create likely north of 50 affordable housing units for the community. This is only a draft proposal that we've worked with the planning board in terms of some mixed use buildings corresponding to some residential buildings. I think that the overall net fiscal benefit to the community is almost at a minimum $1.5 million on the low side, likely $2.5 million or more in positive tax to the community. And in terms of affordable housing, I think we would anticipate that there would be a 20% component. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions.
So you're proposing to redevelop the property?
Yes, the rear parking lot.
So you replaced basically build residential housing on the parking lot?
And retail use in the back.
Residential
correct.
and retail? Okay.
Yes.
And help me understand, and you're the proponent of a warrant article
Yes, sir.
as opposed to the planning board?
I believe technically the planning board brings it forward, but that's probably a good question for the
Yeah, I
legal
mean,
guys.
again, I understand you're defending the article because it is favorable to you, but I'm trying to understand the planning board's position.
Yeah, the planning board voted unanimously in support of this article, and the select board voted in favor of it. There were 2 for it and 3 against it. And the Economic Development Committee, I believe it was 6-1 in favor of it. So it's had some, what I would consider strong support.
And again, what are you asking from the housing trust?
I would like the housing trust to see the net benefit to the increased housing in the community and the fact that it could benefit the community to the tune of, if we even use the draft proposal, it could create north of 50 new affordable housing units for the community. And I think the units that we're talking about are really not geared towards putting a burden on the school system. They're really geared towards firemen and policemen and people that live and work in your community currently. And I think the hardship in terms of where we're proposing it at the outskirts of town could not be more ideal. I think when communities look at adding affordable housing, everybody kind of gets this NIMBY, not in my backyard. It's a great idea, but I don't want to have it in my backyard. I think in this one, it's a win-win for the community because it's literally out on the outskirts of town, and it's closely buttressing Route 9 and 495, providing easy access on and off, the highway system. So I think in terms of creating gridlock in a downtown area or something, this really does, I think, create a lot of affordable housing in a good location, and it activates a corridor where people who want to live and work there have alternatives as opposed to vacant office buildings.
Steve? Steve, you got questions or concerns or?
Yeah, I think I'm still soaking it
trying
in,
to soak it
so
in.
I'll see if Mark has anything first.
Mark?
I know Mark has probably seen this already, but
Yeah, and I have seen this, and I was one of the votes against it on Tuesday night. That the select board did vote to support it 3-2. And I'll repeat some of my concerns, but it's a little different in that I'm wearing my affordable housing hat now instead of my select board hat. But I was not at all, to be clear, I'm not opposed to looking at changes of use up there. But I'm reluctant to say that extending the highway business to this site or with possibly a snowball effect to the entire zone, the right zoning. I saw back when we voted to extend the senior housing to the state hospital site, we thought that was the right zoning. It and bit us in the foot, and we didn't end up with any affordable units. We also, when you do something like this, I feel like it reduces the leverage of the planning board when the proponent does actually come in, because they may be asking for waivers, or again, the planning board would get the sense that they have, the proponent has town support behind it, and it puts them in a difficult negotiating position, in my opinion. The thing I was concerned with, it may not even be this forward. So, once the zoning is passed, it's a clean slate. While I have confidence in this proponent to follow through, if they sell the property, then what happens, right? Like the next person comes along, and just don't know, right? I would prefer to see a comprehensive analysis of a zoning impact change. I'd like to see it, either through an modifying the underlying zoning up there, as opposed to just extending the highway business. And that being said, from an affordable housing standpoint, I do think it would bring additional units. My only concern on that is we just saw a project in the highway business obtain waivers from the planning board, despite what we, as the trust, recommended. So, reluctant to support it for all those reasons.
Yeah, I as a long-term resident of Westborough, I have a strong belief in but I don't think we want to ask the town meeting to start getting involved in project-specific zoning choices. I love the town meeting. It's a great group of people. But town meeting takes action on a totally tactical basis for each year, for each decision, and it depends on who happens to show up. They don't have any expertise. They don't have any history. They don't have any follow-up or enforcement capability. So
Right. So
if we're doing project-specific zoning, that's a bad precedent to set.
I'd respectfully suggest as a long-term resident in the community, the worst thing that, you and other taxpayers will suffer is if there's a broad giveaway in a huge overlay or zoning area, you're going to get zero back, and you're going to make a lot of developers very wealthy. And I think you're not going to get the guarantees that you get when you work on an isolated parcel basis. And so I think I think from affordable trust position, you have to look at what is the zoning allowed on the parcel now. We have the right to put a big box warehouse. We have an HVAC supply distribution company that wants to buy it now. We could sell it to them and they could put the box there, or we can do something that really benefits the community as a whole. And I think from an affordability standpoint, there's a housing crisis. The land is already going to these churches everywhere in every Metro West community. Those are all being done via Dover Amendment. They cut right through any town level zoning. And so I think if we're trying to solve the housing crisis, we have to create parcels of land in useful areas that don't burden residents. And I respectfully would suggest this is the least burdensome property you could pick in Westborough that could create some housing for a lot of people who really need it and can't afford to live in the very communities they've grown up in.
Help me understand, would this property, would this zoning change, or would this confirm that it was covered by the inclusionary zoning provisions of our current zoning codes? Maybe more a question for
Yeah, why don't I let George
for,
join and answer
our
that? I
planning
think the answer's
director
yes,
than it
but I'd
is
like
for a developer, but
Jenny might
I
be
mean,
able-
at a
Yeah,
first,
if-
at a
I
first
can
level,
answer that,
I'm a
Henry.
huge supporter of the inclusionary zoning.
Right.
And I understand inclusionary zoning is continually being challenged. And I'm real concerned about that challenge. And if we at least need to be covering these kinds of things by the inclusionary zoning.
Yeah, Hank, it would extend the highway business zone. So the inclusionary zoning, well, Jenny's here. She can answer that
Yeah.
better.
Yes, so in the highway business zone, we had changed that zoning, I believe, in 2024. And we clarified that the planning board would require a special permit, so it'd go through the planning board for any multifamily development, but any development. And there's many things in there, but one of them is the inclusionary zoning. So it's a requirement of the 20% affordability. There is still the option to buy down the affordability with monetary payment. And then I'll just add that one of the changes that was also included in section 6.2 for the highway business was to require mitigation from the developer or the proponent of the project.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, that the planning board didn't make this decision lightly. They've spent a lot of time working with our company and the representatives and doing field walks and site visits, and a lot of dialogues occurred since last August. And I think when you look at the mitigation that we're proposing to the community based on the size, it's very substantial and impact a lot of different departments within the community. So I think when you do broad, large area rezoning, you get none of that back. You don't get guaranteed mitigation. You don't get, and I think I started with this, and I'd really want to make sure I close and make this point. There's a very large office building there. There's a requirement that parking continue with that site. There's active tenants, over 100,000 square feet of tenants that have leases that go out to 2031, 2032. That we're not going to be able to run to town hall without a very long and thoughtful process with the planning board. This ultimately likely leads to 50 plus affordable housing units in an outskirt area with no traffic burden on any residential neighborhood, with a positive tax swing of $1.5 million to $2.5 million extra dollars if it gets built to the taxpayers. I mean,
Yeah, again, at this point in time, I don't understand enough about the article and what the scope, what the area it covers.
yeah, I have
to
a
really
map.
make a judgment. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got a huge industrial park over there that I think of as the Park Drive Park. But I mean, there used to be a lot of industrial over there. There's now a lot of commercial over there.
Perhaps I could share a map with you that we prepared.
We're looking at changing. It looks to me like we're looking at changing one parcel. And
It's actually two, but yes.
and then why wouldn't other owners of adjacent parcels or nearby parcels come in with the same request? We need to look at this thing in terms of
That's-
what are you
that-
going to do about the whole that whole end of town.
Right. That's a very excellent question. If I could show you a map and explain to you why most of those neighbors, like Olympus, like the psychiatric center, they're not going to be coming forward. Some of a large portion is actually unbuildable because it's like not a state park, but it's reservation land. So what's happening right now is developers are pushing the exit sign and selling to, like, for example, recently 30 acres was sold to Connected Church that is in that zone. But if I could share a map with you and show you what we prepared.
At this point, I mean, I'm certainly I'm in favor of creating opportunities for the community through the existing administrative structure to encourage more affordable housing.
Right.
I don't feel qualified to make decisions about whether this particular zoning article is the way to go about it or not. It feels like spot zoning to me, or single or parcel by parcel zoning. That concerns me because I don't understand it. So as
Right.
an individual, I have a hard time saying this is a great idea or a bad. It's a great idea to get more affordable housing. It's not clear to me that we definitely do.
I can speak to spot zoning, and I will just note that we also did send this to our town council. We had talked about it last year with them about spot zoning, but we just asked for a formal opinion from them on the spot zoning. But spot zoning is not just about zoning a single parcel for a specific zoning district. It's about looking at the annual plan, the comprehensive plan, the master plan. Sorry, I was trying to find that word. The master plan, it's looking at the uses that are currently existing in that zoning, comparing it to what's being asked for. So there's a lot more to spot zoning than just parceling out just a single parcel for that zone.
Again, I'm comfortable supporting the planning board and encouraging more opportunities for affordable housing. I don't know if this is the right project to do that with. I don't have the expertise. I'm
sort of in the same ballpark. Obviously, the more affordable housing, the better. That's why we're here. But I'm not sure if I fully understand all of the ramifications and whatnot. So it's not my
That's fair enough.
zoning in general is not my
Yeah.
strong point.
No problem.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not opposed to the development per se, but I think more affordable housing is great. That's why I'm sitting here as a trustee. But I've got to defer to the administrative structure to manage how we go about that.
Right.
And if they believe going to town meeting for with the warrant articles the best way to do that, fine. They should go to town meeting with the warrant article. As an individual voter, I'll make a decision on a town meeting floor.
I just want to make a recommendation. So instead of writing a letter of support, maybe the trust can submit a letter just saying that you're remaining neutral because you don't feel qualified to give an opinion either way on the zoning.
Mark, Steve, would that be?
I would be fine with that because that's literally how I feel.
Yeah. So essentially just saying you didn't,
Right.
take a vote on this because of that.
Mark?
I'm fine not taking a vote. I do feel qualified, but I'm
well,
fine with the sense that the trust, if the trust wants to take a position that we're not going to take a position, I think that's fine. I think, again, it's not, I think without let's just move it forward. I mean, as far as the sense of, if you want to take a vote to decide not to vote, basically. I certainly don't want to, I don't think the trust should come out in opposition to this article.
Right.
I think we could just decline to make a motion and move forward
Yeah,
from there.
I mean, the easiest thing at this point
I'm not sure.
is the trust will not come out in opposition, and we can't support the article as it's written because we don't understand. It's not our place. we don't understand enough to either support or not support. We're not going to take a position. As individuals, we'll take positions on town meeting floor.
I think that's fair.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah,
no, thank you for the
apologize for
presentation.
not being more
Yeah.
more solid on it, but it's a fairly, for me, it's a fairly complex issue.
I will say, Alan, it's probably worth finding out though for future reference. If we would have been able to vote with you recusing, just so we know for logistics going forward, because I'm sure it'll happen again at some point.
Yeah, and I'll still follow up with council.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just
On
more
that.
of a, the vote never happened, so that doesn't matter, but I think it's good for us to know.
Yeah. One of
Thanks
those,
again.
the nuances of open meeting law and,
Yeah, no.
Oh,
And Ethics Commission
I
rulings
fully
and
agree
things, so.
with the move.
okay. Thank you. Last on the agenda would be issues and correspondence, if any, has any other open issues or anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't have
Nope.
any.
Mark, anything else? Open issues and correspondence?
No.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Mark?
Silverberg, yes.
Herrera, yes.
Roush, yes.
Edinburgh, yes. Thank you very much, Westborough TV, for facilitating the hybrid meeting and recording and rebroadcasting us, and we are adjourned.
Excellent.